It's Billy. Right now. Yo, what if I got attacked by the clones? What if the builder think they found a better stone? What if the beat don't match with the metronome? What if that means you walk your path alone? Call me a vagabond. If all these streets leading to Rome, then wherever I lay is my home. It's Brooklyn, boy strong. I manifest, I'm in the zone. Y'all silly better back up off my throne. Listen, boy nice, better give him his propers. How we come out sane from all the mosh pits. How we found the key to the game without a locksmith. How we seem to manage these lanes is so obnoxious. He let it flow from the brain, trust in the process. A vet journeyman on multiple rosters. If I want it, I go out and get it and cop it. A monster with limitless options. Man, like goddamn, y'all gon' soon figure out who I am. We stay cooking, y'all used to that spam. Western beef, I might square up at the square dance. Look, I change plans, not even a southpaw, I'm an outlaw with a rare stance. Your crew never had a fair chance.
Why's that?
I kill a whole bear with my bare hands. Oh, they studied the dark? Well, I was raised in it. Brain shifted, the kid displayed insane physics. Best story never told, and it ain't finished. How we handled the rock, spun and kept the same pivot. I frame different, hot like a flame kitchen. A whole 2 levels out of your range gifted. Catch me on the highway, lane switching. Or right at the top of your bay wish list. It's Billy. Right now.
What up? What up?
It's Billy.
It's Billy, it's Billy, it's Billy, it's Billy. Thanks for being here. That's my track right now. Really loving that, still bumping that for myself out here. Check it out if you haven't heard it. It's on the same channel. But this is how Billy sees it. It is January 30th. It is another Monday, and it's 8 p.m., so I'm here, and we're making it happen, and we're talking about the things and how I see it. And today's actually a really special one because this is something I've wanted to do, but I haven't really thought to do, and through conversation with Sheba, and with myself, and with my therapist, and through observation of observation of myself, like during therapy or even while creating art and just in life with Sheba, and in life, with my family. I realized that there are certain things that I don't get into, and I'm an artist, so I like to explore stuff. And in the last couple of years, I've been really talking more about myself, creating, delving into things, but yet there are things that I still hold guarded, and that's okay. I think I have the right to that, but I think that there's a lot to learn from that ability to mind that. So it's been cool. A couple of times I've been able to kind of walk through some of that with people on this show. But no, this is an opportunity. I said, you know what? I want to do an episode where I talk about like 5, what up, Sheba Biba, where I talk about 5 things that I don't really talk about much, and 5 things that about myself, 5 personal things that I don't talk about much. And through that kind of exploration, see what happens with that, getting into why maybe I don't talk about it, and see what happens. So another reason I think it's cool to do this, because I think about 2 years ago when I left CNN, I realized when I was first getting on this kind of journey of doing this artistic thing, I was trying to figure out my voice, and I found myself having some issues and feeling nervous about speaking about certain things. And I wanted to, politically, coming out of CNN, there's a mindfulness that you're trained to have in terms of your public voice and such. And I felt like I had a big moment that was useful for me and huge for me when I recorded on Instagram this thing, the reasons why I left CNN. And in that, just kind of freed myself, was able to step into the person I wanted to be, which was a person that was going to be free to talk about, my political views, someone who wasn't going to be kind of hamstrung and aware of a title and a way of being and actively sort of tethered to that rather than to be free and say things as I see them. So it was a weird moment because after doing that publicly in the live, it literally did create that freedom for me. It opened up the world, I think, and allowed me now a new space of comfort to then, get creative in that space and to talk freely and create content, create art, have discussions without being worried about what I was saying or, having this tension. And that to me is a huge goal. And so I look at that moment as a really big positive moment among many. And so today might be different only in the sense that I'm pointing now to something much more personal. Instead of sort of freeing myself in my political discourse, it's like freeing up some murky, anxious real estate in me. That's an interesting way to think about it, I think. So, one of the things I don't talk about a lot, or I notice I get awkward talking about, is just my family. So I'm gonna start right there. My family. For most of my life, my family was, in my mind, my brothers and my mom. I have 2 younger brothers. They're awesome. I love them. And the awkward thing is to say that I haven't had a conversation with them in over a year. Both of my brothers. And it's tough for me. It's tough for me to say that because not only is that not a great thing, it seems like objectively not a great thing, but it's also something I was actively not wanting to have happen. I grew up seeing lots of different frayed relationships with siblings and stuff like this. I heard about that, and I knew that that's not something that would happen to me and my brothers. Like I said, I'm 8 and 9 years older than both of them. They're so cool. They always have been, but there's an age difference there. So they're 1 year apart, and there's a different bond that they have. They're also the sons of my stepdad. Okay, so we have a different dad. Okay, but I don't even. Sometimes I have to be reminded of that because I don't. All these little prefixes and half this, whatever. They're my brothers, and they always have been. And further, I was kind of raised to think about myself as kind of brother, but also role model, as also kind of surrogate dad. I don't think we've ever had a physical fight. You know how brothers always talk about like fighting and wrestling or rough housing or playing whatever. Like we didn't do that because I was older and I was gonna hurt them when they were really much younger, obviously. And then by the time they like they're 6, I'm already like high school, So so my whole thing, and it was like, yo, take care of your brothers, yo. Take care of your brothers, yo. Show your brothers what it's gonna be. Yo, your brothers are watching you. I used to get a lot of that. Your brothers are watching you. And that was a useful motivation for me to get me to be better in school and to carry myself well. I was very aware of stuff like that. And I tried to be a really excellent brother. And so we didn't fight, so I didn't even rib them much, stuff like that. I didn't, do that kind of stuff. I was always kind of like looking out for them and trying to give them words of wisdom. And my whole thing was always, give them words of wisdom. I picked them up from school a lot. I would pick them up from the daycare, from school when they were much younger. Like, those were like responsibilities that I had early on, you know what I'm saying? Instead of coming from home from school or playing basketball or whatever, like I would take the bus and go pick them up and walk them back home. And my thing was I never I mean, I'm pretty sure of it. I just adopted it. I knew that that was what I needed to do. It wasn't something to really complain too much about. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you hear people like, "Oh, God," I'm like, I was on time, and I think in the whole history of that, I don't know, maybe had a mess up maybe once sometime somewhere. You know, it's like several years of picking them up from school. Also, like in the summertime, um, I was babysitting them, and we would get free lunch from the school, and every day I would do that. You know what I'm saying? So, um, you got to do that. You can't mess that up. You see, like we got to make sure everybody gets fed, blah blah, and um, so, and I took the role on with pride. I didn't have any issue being this like brother who was always trying to like be a little bit paternal with it. Now, the thing that I'm realizing, and I don't want to get any details with my brothers who I love, and they know that, and but we just haven't spoken in over a year. Like things have gotten tough, where I think sometimes you need time apart a bit to let things settle and to recalibrate. You know what I mean? So that's where we are. I think it's unfortunate. You've always been a protector and a provider. Yeah, I've always tried to be that for sure. And yeah, always been that. Always stepped up for that. And but what happens with that is you pull that in as an identity, and you realize that, or you don't realize until later how you manifest that. So for me, this has just been a role that I played, a way that I saw myself. I knew that I needed to be this, and I would, sometimes your brother wants that other form of brotherhood, that more stereotypical thing, and you're coming in with advice, and you're trying to be mindful of this and that. So that's how I assess it today. We have a relationship that's still uh, improving, and I know, 2023, we've already said that we're gonna communicate and kind of break that issue. It's a very complex thing, and it's something I don't talk about. It's something I don't talk about. Um, my mom and I have a great relationship, but it's been different and it's evolving as well. You know, my mom's always been there for me. All of my early memories are of my mom from Guadeloupe and Antigua, where I lived for a couple of years, and then my mom, and that's where I lived with my biological dad. That's where my biological dad still is, in Antigua. And my mom and I moved out to Miami at first when I was 5, and then eventually to New York. And stayed in New York, eventually met my stepdad. So my mom and I have just been road dogs through a international epic journey. Um, and I've seen a lot of her challenges, you know what I'm saying? I've seen a lot of the difficulties. She came out here, and English was her second language, French was the first language, and figured it out, and was a teacher. She was my preschool teacher for a minute, and um, very kind, and very, but also a disciplinarian. You know what I'm saying? Very strict, and everybody always loved my mom. It was great because all of my classmates always loved my mom. I remember having some anxieties because just off of I felt like I needed to, a dude would say like, "My mom's pretty," and they would say something, and something about Billy's mom, and I felt like I'm supposed to be mad, right? That's what the fucking thing says. Um, hey man, I'm talking about my mom. He didn't even say it, anyway. Um, some weird, interesting memories with my mom. I remember my mom kicked me off the football team several times. She knew that was a big thing for me in high school. That being on the football team was so important for me that all my behavior would tighten up. and I would get the grades I needed and stop being a class clown and do what I needed to do to play football, man. And it was very, it was a good tactic. And, younger than that, let me think, man. We always, every now and again, my mom will remember how we got into a brawl with these kids, these high school age kids, back to back, It's a nutty story. I think I talk about it in another thing. It's a nutty story. But, yeah, that was actually, my brother had a bike. This girl was trying to take his bike. This is the short story. I'm gonna short this up for you. Girl tried to take his bike. I come over. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" My brother starts crying and screaming, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Nah, I want to ride his bike." It's like he's still riding it, And so I didn't even touch her, But she goes off. Apparently, tells this kid, her brother, that I hit her, and that sets off a whole thing, yo. I get into a fight. I get jumped. Actually, to keep it a buck, I get jumped right there because I supposedly hit this girl that I didn't. I take the bike back with my brother, and we go home. And I didn't even tell my mom at first because I didn't want to make stuff weird. I don't even know what the reasons are fully there, but I didn't tell my mom at first. But then she was on me about something. About something probably in the dishes. I think it was the dishes, and then I start to cry, and she was like, "Yo, what? Who jumped you?" So then she takes off her slipper, and she has my brother stay in the house, and she turned on some cartoon, and then she walked out, and it was at the park, so took off her slipper, and she's walking with me, aggressive, dragging me, because I don't want any, like, I'm done, I got jumped pretty rough, actually, and, but she's like, "We're going to figure this out," so we go to the park, and she's like, who jumped you, Billy? And they were there, and I go over, and I point to them, say, they jumped me, and she said, claps really loud, she's a teacher, she got that teacher clap, and, she hit him with the clap. She got everybody's attention. She said, "Who hit my son? Did you hit my son?" And the dudes came over, and this one dude in particular, this dude's name was Ricky. Pretty Ricky, what they called him. Not his name was Ricky, but she told me to hit him. She said punch him. And it was a whole thing, man. This felt like a movie, actually, I remember at the time. But long story short, he's like, "Oh, yeah, hit me. Come on. And I hit him. Knock him out. Right? Then it creates a whole thing. Everybody fucking circles us. It was crazy. Like a whole bunch of people circle us now, and it was really like 3 guys that really tried to fight us. And people are getting their licks in, and they're trying not to hit my mom. They're really trying to hit me. And then the police came and did a little siren thing. Everybody ran off. And I started a whole crazy experience, real talk. This is on when I lived in East New York, Essex Street, between New Lots and Hagerman. And what year is this? Like 89 maybe? Man. Just a whole bunch of stuff on that block, yo. A whole bunch of weird problems, you know what I mean? I got into a fight, you know what I mean, with my mom. And she had my back. It was crazy. It was a nutty situation. So eventually we moved from that block. We moved to Canarsie. But we had about 2 years there. And it was like a rough 2 years, But my mom was always... I've had lots of experiences with her, So even so much when we're in high school, now where I'm in high school, with my mom and my brothers, my mom and my stepdad started to have afraid relationship, fights and anger and issues. Sometimes they would get into altercations, and my mom would kind of take me to a hotel. Or, yeah, take me to a hotel. And we would just stay in a room, in a motel, and she would just tell me the stuff. She had no one to talk to. And she would tell me the issue, and I played that role for her. And this would be sometimes, and you would kind of sit quietly, and I would try to console her. But more often, I would really just listen because I didn't know what to say. And sometimes I would have my stuff and I'd have my equipment, and I would have to go to school from the motel. And then come back, and I don't know, we never really talked about that, So this is actually the first time me talking about this out like this, in this detail at all. So, yeah. But a couple of years ago, my brothers and I talked a bit about, so this goes back to my brothers. My brothers and I talked a bit about our different experiences on that. So we were in our late 20s before we started talking about this experience and how we experienced it differently, from his point of view, from their point of view. I was taken from the house, and that there was some kind of team split set up. Certainly that was probably also a narrative that was built maybe from the dad too, right? Who's now with the two sons, and they're sitting there and trying to navigate what just happened. You know what I'm saying? So I learned about sort of their perspective on that, how difficult that was for them. It was something I hadn't really considered before. So that was an interesting moment that my brothers and I bonded on. We actually shed some tears over understanding how that operated differently for each of us. But it's such a weird thing. You realize that the parents are doing the best they can and doing what they have to do to survive, and they're navigating things. And you can be a kid, experiencing something completely differently and forming narratives. You know what I'm saying? So I think all of this kind of reinforced a lot of stuff where I'll get about this later, some anxiety stuff that I have persistent through adulthood. But it's like this narrative, like I said, including the kind of being a model for my brothers, I had to be on point, and I was trying to save the family, essentially. And I'd internalized that deeply, and that was a deep weight that I had said that I was going to do. And no matter what, I'm going to figure this out. We're going to make this money, and I can't wait for the day to buy my mom a house and to, be on cruises with my brothers and my mom, and buy my mom a house. That was the thing. And so for me, a big path for that was, the only path I could think of was, first of all, I had to go to college, and in terms of affording that and loans, didn't want to get all crazy. So football, I had to get good at football. Football was the move, yo. And I just took football real seriously. And but we'll get into that later. I developed a fixer identity with the family. You know what I'm saying? That was part of my thing. That was part of my role that I played. And I think it served me in some ways because I am a pretty good fixer of things. I'm intensely aware of certain social phenomena and body language and all that. I developed capacity to preempt the nerves and the energy that my stepdad might bring, or the nerves and energy my mom might bring. And all this stuff kind of operated real on the low. I'm only recently able to articulate some of this stuff and trying to process some of this stuff. But I was distressed. My I don't communicate with my stepdad. But my brothers, I think, have a relationship with him. It's frayed as well. There's that. My father, my biological father, I connected with back when I was 28. So somewhere around age 26, 28, I got either an email or a phone call from him. And he was just like, yo, expressing an interest and wanting to get to know me. And he's in Antigua, and he was gonna get me a ticket, and let's reconnect. It was I'm speeding it up, but it was actually really a process of like communicating. I think it might have been like handwritten letters too, because he's old school. And it was nice, and it was great to reconnect. I've said in another thing, like I've wondered about my dad, but I wasn't one of those kids who was like dedicated to finding him or something like this. But it was nice to reconnect with him, and it was pretty interesting to reconnect with him for real, to meet him when I went out to Antigua. True story, yo. I go out to Antigua, and I'm going to see my dad for the first time. And I get to the airport, and you take a big plane into Puerto Rico, and then you take, is that true? Or that's Guadalupe actually? No, so we had this little plane, and you take the plane, and you lands in a kind of a smaller airport, and I get out, and I'm looking for somebody. I'm looking around, and I see this older guy who looks like me, man. He looks like me. I see it. He's just an older guy. He's a bit, thinner and tall. And so I walk over, and I'm like, Dad? So my dad's name is Edson Bunton. And he turns, he says, Bill. And I was like, we give each other a hug, and he hugs me, and then he says, oh, and he just looks at me, and I'm looking at him, and then he walks me to the car, and as he's walking me to the car, I notice him like doing something with his shirt, and I find out as I walk closer, and I notice he carries on himself this huge kind of a hand sanitizer, like a hand sanitizer that you might see on the wall at Walmart, like a half gallon size joint, and it's just on his person, and he kind of squirts a whole bunch of it and rubs it all over his hands and all over his arms, and it's like dripping all over the floor. It was pretty interesting. It was very interesting, and I realized, I said, okay, all right, this is gonna be an interesting trip. Gonna learn about my dad. Okay, and so I learned about him, and he's an interesting man. Retired professor. His thing was linguistics. He spoke several languages. I want to say 7 languages with fluency. I think he taught 4 of them, 4 languages at the university. And when I'm walking through Antigua, everyone's like, Mr. Bunton, hey, Mr. Bunton, oh, Mr. Bunton. People are like, is that your son, Mr. Bunton? And it was an interesting thing. People didn't know he had a son. But my dad has a building that was apparently where I used to live when I was in Antigua, age like 4. But he turned it into a theater because that's his thing, and he calls it the Scaramouche Theater. And on the first floor are some restaurants, bars, and like a pizza shop that pays him rent to be there, and he has this theater on the second floor. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't done any plays in a while. He's a bit of a recluse. He doesn't really like people and germs, as you could tell. It's so funny. My first experience hugging my dad, he turns around and he's rubbing hand sanitizer off. But that's a condition. He's aware of it. He was actually really fun about it. He was actually really playful about it. He said, I can't help it, man. He's like, I know it's ridiculous. I know. But he's a really smart guy, and it was interesting to see how much we had in common and all that. But that's my relationship with my dad. And it's gone back and forth, and we're still working on it. But that's my whole family thing, yo, and it ties into the next thing, which is the anxieties. Okay, so if you know me in real life, different people know me in different ways, I guess. But or even if you know me through these conversations I've been having on this or on Saturday morning cartoons, or in the art I do in different various ways, man. Like, I'm an anxious person. I've dealt with anxiety almost all my life, and the stuff I talked about previous. So that first one was family. We're in the anxiety part here. Um, it's all related. And the more I realize and learn about myself, the more I realize these things about myself, and I can contextualize a different story about myself than the one I typically had. And the one I typically had served me for a purpose, for a moment, for a while. It was helpful. These are ways that I navigated the difficult things in the past, ways I defined myself so that I could operate, you know what I'm saying, in different conditions. But I'm so blessed to be in a period now of control and awareness, and I have the flexibility and the power to sort of look into these anxieties and see the deeper root causes of them. And once you're able to do that, and you can sort of see it and recontextualize stories, you can define yourself differently. And if you define yourself differently, you are defining the world differently. And that's how that works. That's why it's so powerful. Because if you're defining the world differently and yourself differently, you're moving differently. And you realize how much space you actually have and how much space you actually can take up, rather than to play small in whatever ways you felt that you had to play small. That's been my story. Yeah, I think my anxiety shows up in lots of different ways, but I've also really always had a sense of myself, and I just didn't know that it was okay, you know? I always had a sense of myself, but I didn't know it was okay. I always felt that I was a little too weird, a little too concerned with X, Y, and Z, a little bit um, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much. Always felt like too much, and I need to walk on eggshells and be more careful. I realized at some point that you could say the wrong thing, or you could say the right thing, but people's interpretations, and to be careful about this and that. And you're a model for your brothers, and so like I said with football, I just was I took out this anxiety on football, man, and I love this opportunity to run, to be aggressive, to hit things, to get hit, to become an athlete, because I wasn't from the jump one at all. I was just a high energy kid, and then I had to kind of learn how to kind of be an athlete, how to have control of your body and all these other techniques. And it was a great outlet for me. But the entire time I'm feeling inadequate, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I guess a lot of people feel that way, but that was my experience. And even as being captain of the teams, you know what I'm saying, my whole thing was I just played it low. I didn't have a lot of big rah-rah speeches. I tried to be myself. I tried to be funny. I tried to and I tried to be the thing. I didn't want to be the guy telling people to run 4 miles if I didn't run my 4 miles. So I was always gonna try to run the 4 miles. When it was time to do workouts, we could choose. Like in college, we could choose what time we wanted to do. I do the early hour workouts with the early crew, and try to be that guy that did the stuff early. So like at the end of the week, the coaches would check, did everybody do these things? And it was like, demonstrate that I was willing to do that, so that I can say what I need to say, so I can talk that shit, because I did what I needed to do, But the whole time, anxious and feeling inadequate. And it's all related to, I think, a lot of the fixer stuff from the family. This desire to figure it out. If I could, yeah. All right. The next one, is really actually pertinent and relevant today, in the wake of the police brutality incident with Tyree Nichols. If you haven't seen the video, I would totally suggest not seeing it. I don't see any reason or any value in seeing it. I watched some of it. I watched a good portion of it. Apparently, it's like hours of it from different angles and from different cameras and such. The way it works, man, now with the camera footage, is okay. Now you got better footage. You've got so I don't think you have to look at it, but this is tied to a broader set of problems in our society and in our social discourse. You know what I'm saying? And it's something that I've been interested in a long time, and it's something that I have a personal stake in, and it's something I haven't talked about much. So I'm gonna do that here. I had two major altercations with the police in New York City. I've had smaller ones, you know what I'm saying, in the subway and things like this, just interactions, I mean to say, but two altercations where I was arrested and detained, or handcuffed and detained. And I want to get into these two stories. It's my junior year, junior year going into senior year, I think it was, or sophomore year going into junior year. Either way, summertime before the football season, we're at the football field, this little practice facility we had, and we're packing up the trucks because we're going to go to camp, actually. I believe that's right. And we're hanging out in front of this thing. What is that building called? It's actually where the football field is now. Brooklyn Tech football field is at this location. But before it was a field. And all the guys are hanging out. There's some, the coaches are inside, and we're just talking and laughing, whatever. And all of a sudden, sirens blare and cars come from either direction of the block, right? And this car comes in and another van comes in, and it's just two vehicles, and cops pop up out of the vehicles, and I don't believe guns were drawn yet, but they are pushing people out of the way. I actually had time to see them push people out of the way, grab me, and throw my head up against the wall. Okay? Throw my head up against the wall, chest against the wall, and he's like, "Come here." And he throws me up, grabs my arms, puts my arms behind my back. They put on handcuffs, and it's very rough. The handcuffs are really tight, and they have this thing where they have full control. When they have full control of you, they can lift your, the more they lift your hands higher, the more they can inflict pain and kind of put you in submission. I really wasn't resisting, and yet, I was dealing with that. Let me see here. I'm gonna look up the Abner Louima case, yo. In 1997, so this was 1997. Yeah, or 1998. So in August of 97, Abner Louima was a Haitian American man who was physically attacked, brutalized, and raped by the NYPD outside of a Brooklyn nightclub. This is just a one-off thing, but the reason I bring him up, because it was within that time frame. I remember that clear in my head. That's one of the things that played in my head as I was trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. So, yeah. Get the cuffs on me. They're roughing me up. I'm asking, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? Shut up. And pulling my arm higher to make me shut up. So I'm like, And I'm like, yo, the cuffs are tight. Shut up. They throw me into a van. But before they throw me into a van, I'm looking at everybody. Everybody's just looking at me. I'm hearing people go, oh, Bill, what did he do? What did he do? I'm like, what the fuck you mean, what did I do? What did you mean? I was with y'all all day. But, so everyone's looking and they're like, so I go, get coach, you know? So someone grabs or runs into the building and I get thrown into the van. And I'm in the van, it's a dark van, I'm by myself. And I'm thinking, what is going on? You know? And again, Abner Louis was coming up in my head. And I just feel very frightened, very scared. And I just figured I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna try to just like figure this out. But eventually I hear Coach Debo. Bless Coach Debo. I gotta actually reconnect with Coach Debo. Coach Debo is a legendary high school football coach, legendary coach at Brooklyn Tech, who was actually a huge role model for me and for so many kids. But in this case, he comes out and just says what's going on and describes to them. He's like, no. Billy's always been, he was here. He's one of our players. He's always been with us all day. It couldn't be the guy. So he pulled me out of the van. They had me stand for a second and a couple of cars kind of drive by that are tinted and they talk on the walkie-talkie thing. And they're like, are you sure? Blah, blah, blah. And then they let me go. They take the cuffs off and they're like, okay, you're free to go. That's all they say. And all the kids are there. I distinctly remember some cheerleaders just because my embarrassed brain remembers this. And I remember just looking around and I remember Coach D kind of holding me, looking at me, and I just started crying and I fell into his chest. He's a big man. And I was 14, 15 years old. And I fell into his chest and just started crying. And it was weird. It was weird. So he actually, he held on to me and then we just kind of walked into the building together. And I just continued crying until I stopped. And then, he asked me what I needed, gave me some water, and I just chilled. And then eventually, I eventually had to go out. My peoples were still waiting for me, and we would take the train, and I'd go home that day. And it was wild. It was a wild scenario. I was fearful for my life. And I was playing all kinds of ideas, in that like 10-minute period in the thing. What's crazy is I distinctly remember that part of what I was doing was figuring out what I had done. I was sure I must have done something. You know what I'm saying? This is something that we got to look at for real, in the psychology of how things work. I spent some significant time at this point realizing I must have done something. The police got me. Friends were just looking and talking about what did I do. The reality was something I started to conform my notions of things. I started to kind of try to figure it out. And I was like, no, I was just playing football all day, right? Shit like this. And it's wild stuff, yo. We don't understand and we don't properly give any consideration for what this does and what it means to go through something like this. And I actually am one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the lucky ones. Happened twice, actually. A year later, year later playing basketball at my friend's place. He had a very small backyard and not a very small backyard, a nice medium-sized backyard. Brooklyn, like nobody had backyards. He had a pool, little outdoor pool. And this is actually, by the way, one of the best athletes I've ever known, actually, and played with and met in real life. Good friend who I don't know where he is at this point. We're all older now. I hope he's doing well. I'm not even going to say names, but I'm chilling. We're playing basketball, and I remember hearing some screams. We heard some noises. We heard some rustling and some noises. And we're kind of like, what is that? But whatever, we just keep playing. And then we hear a woman screaming loudly and like consistently. And so then we're like, oh, okay. So then let's stop. We take the ball and we start to walk up his stairs to get to the building. As we're on the stairs, we hear, freeze! Get on the fucking ground! Da-da-da-da-da! And they just start screaming, get on the ground, guns are drawn. They're actually over his fence. He has a fence. And they're over his fence, and there's two guys with their guns drawn, and there's still people screaming, and then you can hear people running, So we put our hands up. I had the basketball. I put the hands up and dropped the basketball, and I'm like, don't shoot, shut up, shut the fuck up, get on the ground. We're trying to slow, because we're not on the ground, we're on the stairs, so we try to slowly walk down the stairs, you know what I'm saying? Hands up like this, and then walk down the stairs, and then I know that I was actually behind him, so I walked down the stairs. I had to get out of the way, actually. I can't just fall right there because my friend is coming down, so I kind of walk over a little bit. Like, I actually remember this now. They eventually get over the fence, and they have us on the ground, and they're screaming, and they're giving us orders to get on our stomach, and so we do that, and they cuff us. They cuff him, actually, and then they cuff me with rope, or not rope, the little binds, little saran wrap joints, but the hardcore joints. And like, he has his gun drawn to my head and to my friend's head, and his knee in our back, and he's screaming orders, and the other friends are screaming orders. The other cops are. And I'm trying to explain, and he's trying to like, yo, this is my friend's house. Like, we're playing basketball. They're just saying, shut up, shut up. And they pick us up and walk us through his house, because that's the only way to get out to the front. And they walk us and then put us over on the curb in this whole block. We're sitting on the curb with handcuffs on. And there's a bunch of other young black boys on the curb with handcuffs on. And we look around at each other, and people are walking by and trying to figure out what's going on. You see the windows open up, and people are all trying to figure out what happened. You know what I'm saying? So, it was embarrassing. And another time where it felt like a movie. I was like, what is this? So this time they held us for several hours on that curb in the cuffs. We just sat there, and they took our phones, and then they gave us back our phones after a couple of hours. They apologized, and we were very upset, and I was very upset, and I think now I'm 15, 16. So one of the cops, a black guy, pulls me and him over and tries to give us just a little bit of context about something. It was like some sting or something that they were doing, and the thing got a whole sweep, and they swept up a whole bunch of people, and they got a couple of bad people as well, or something like this, and they apologized. And I remember there was like a little bit of some talk about trying to do some legal thing to there's some little talk about trying to do something legally about this, and then that died down, and that was it. We just kept it moving. Yeah, those are two things I haven't talked about, but they happened. And now I'll just I have a conflicting relationship with my understanding of the police, because I've also lived in a tough neighborhood where walking past the police car was my safest path to getting to the grocery store and or to the train station to get to school. And I walked that path, the path that I knew had the police car. And like I said, I had a police car break up a fight, more than one fight. And there was lots of things in the neighborhood that were difficult, and the police seemed to be a place to I don't know, to be safer from that, but obviously it's a very fucked up system, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work as it should, and everyone's confused by it, and everyone wants to understand it. They thought maybe we could have cameras on the police, and maybe the key is to have more black police or people from the neighborhood and such. It seems pretty evident to me that the police encounter, it means that you're having a bad day. You do not want to engage with a police officer, that person who has a weapon and has tremendous power, and that's just not something you want to be engaging with, especially in a combative, confusing situation. The goal is to create people, families, communities where police engagements are jovial and friendly and about support in one way or another, and minimal, and the need for the heavy, let's say, is minimal. So that's a big conversation. It's not a small conversation. And it's really one of those things that I think now I'm 40 years old and I've had all these experiences, and I know different people in different walks of life that view me in a high regard. And I just want to say that I could easily have been someone left on the street and left nameless, and whatever talent and potential that you see in someone like me, what you see in other casualties, these numbers that come out that nobody pays attention to, is a tremendous travesty and a waste of human potential and a waste of intelligence and innovation and brilliance. And it's pretty sad. Those are both instances where I just felt like I was gonna die. And I had to you get very present in those moments. I remember too, like, almost drowning, similar thing. She says, cops don't keep communities safe, resources and care do. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you're looking at a situation where people get to carve up the world and in ways that serve them. So you can carve up different communities and sort of relegate them to being policed rather than being cared for, rather than having provision for healthy, education, interaction, access, resources, um, and it's a real travesty. And it's the part of the American story that people like Ron DeSantis doesn't want to talk about. Ron DeSantis is banning Black history in Florida. And I can't believe the stuff I'm reading. It's just absurd. And that's how you perpetrate a weird, confused society, is when you try to talk about things in half truths, and be blind to the fullness of what is. So all that stuff was rough, and I think it made me a person who was just like, yo, I'm gonna fix this shit. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, and I'm going to figure shit out, and I'm going to get this thing from my mom, and I'm going to fix this, and I'm gonna fix this, and I'm gonna fix this, and I'm gonna figure this out. And it's a big why for me. It's been a big why for me, and a big driver. And what's funny is to come back to the present and realize that I now have and still have a family. I had a family back then. I have a family now. And the family I have now is different, operates differently. I was able to recruit some awesome players from Sheba's family and with Sheba. And I'm smart, and I picked an amazing woman who has an amazing family as well. And what I've realized is, as part of my growth, real talk, is that because sometimes I have anxiety because it's still not I have this sense of what perfect is. So my mom loves Sheba, and Sheba loves my mom, and things are great. And my mom has a relationship with people that makes sense in everyone's terms, and it is where it is at the moment, and it can be anything else. But part of this, the growth for me has been noticing sort of, again, this attachment, this sense of my mission, my underlying purpose and value. The value that I bring is my capacity to fix this thing, and so I want, and I'm trying to rush some cruise ship event where my mom and my brothers are on the cruise with Sheba's mom and Sheba's family, and that it's the whole thing, or that we're all in Guadeloupe together, all of us. And these are things that are very possible, and who knows, but that part of my healing is to detach from that, from narratives that are like, even good narratives, certainly bad narratives, right? So I think that this thing to be the fixer and the problem solver person was a bad narrative, but like even like a good narrative of this thing is just an anxiety producing attachment. Like at the moment things are great, and things have all the potential to just be better and to be what it is, and that's a good thing. So those are three top three. It was like family, anxiety, arrest, attention. All right. Number 4, non-monogamy journey. So, I'm in a non-monogamous marriage with an amazing woman, and highly suggest it. I highly suggest that you figure out your thing, like who your thing. Well, for me, this is what is my thing, and I realize that I have trouble talking about this. So here I am, I'm gonna dive into this. I think, why do I have trouble talking about this? For some reason, I have this sense of it, even though it's not a shame thing. I don't feel shame about the lifestyle and the way that Sheba and I operate. I'm actually very proud of it, but I categorize it as bragging sometimes. And I also, I don't know, I just don't like talking about it. I think I get weird about like how people will respond to me, and how people will, the kinds of questions that might come up. But let's talk about, like, get this, clear. It's an awesome non-monogamous marriage. I got into non-monogamy back in like 2005, really, like early on, real talk. Because I remember when I was first out here in DC, I had a group of friends. We would chill, we would get brunch, and we would get lunch and hang and talk, and people would talk about their relationships and all this, and a lot of the female friends too would be complaining because the dudes was cheating and oh he did this and why, and in my mind I was always kind of like, maybe the problem is that y'all are supposed, like, you expect it to be this monogamous thing. I don't know, it just made sense to me to be more freer than that. So um my baby says your family doesn't need fixing, you are all whole. Yes, everybody's whole, absolutely. um with non-monogamy, yeah, I just remember like learning about it. Aaron, what up, brother? Learning about it and realizing it was a word. Like, it went from a feeling growing up. Somebody grew up in a church, you know what I'm saying? Like, definitely monogamy was the thing you're supposed to be doing. And but I had a couple of girlfriends, and the breakups were always really tough. And I always realized that having a girlfriend didn't do away the desire. I had desire for other women, and having a girlfriend meant that I had to figure that out. I had to stop that and play this thing and pretend I didn't have eyes and shit like this. Um, so I always thought there was something weird about that. And when I found language for it and a discourse around non-monogamy that didn't make it seem like evil or sinful, um, I was interested. And you know, going through the 20s, man, like, everybody's horny. I was horny as hell. The 20s was an interesting time. 30s is an interesting time as well. But I realized that talking about some of this makes me weird because I have this sense of the model thing again. And one of the people that I respect very much, even though I'm not a person of faith in the same way, I respect someone like a Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a pastor. I respect um, these pastor figures who seem to kind of have a polished presentation. So it's funny because on some level it probably doesn't feel like I care about that, but I do. I have this sense, that talking about sex is something I shouldn't do. It's weird. It's weird. Um, Especially considering that sex is a huge fucking part of the human condition, and it's a huge part of my life, and it's a huge part of most people's lives. And I think if something is part of the human condition, the best thing we can do is to actually engage with it as such, you know, rather than to have this like relationship with it that is othering and trying to carve it out and trying to expel it, and putting it in the realm of evil. That's part of the problem, I think, with a lot of the organized faith stuff and the way we talk about certain things. Sex is a powerful thing. It's powerful. And so there should be rules and discourse and decorum and a process and best practices and shit like this. But you could just see that there's a phrase, like some of the ways people talk about sex, the kind of shame we imbue in children on sex, it carries this stamp of guilt-ridden ignorance, a deep ignorance that causes something to be banished rather than to be explored. And obviously those two things are the same on the same coin. Um, Sheba says MLK cheated on his wife anyway, so I'd rather your image and actions align. Yep. I'm always tough with that because it's true. Obviously, if a true thing needs to be acknowledged, but I always want to give MLK the proper context about who he is in full. Sometimes, and to include that who he is in full, and then to me, I see a resounding like powerful motherfucker. Um, including that, I think one way to improve it, I guess, in that personal realm is to is to work that out. And so I guess what I'm saying is like it makes me weird sometimes. I always want to like defend MLK when I hear that. But there's nothing to defend. That's just what it is. It's just a statement of fact. And the man is still an awesome, inspiring individual. But where were we? On non-monogamy. Yeah, sex is powerful, man. So like, and everyone's doing it. Everyone's desiring it, and everyone's these porn is actually a huge problem for a lot of people because that's all kinds of repressed desire, repressed lust. It's the human condition expressing itself, whether we like it or not. And I think a lot of the terrible certain behaviors we see are rooted in this kind of repression, a failure to be able to engage with oneself, one's true nature, in a constructive way, in a way that is that can be positive. So sex is fun. Sex is light. Sex is play. Sex is healing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, exactly. MLK desires sexual variety as well because he was a human. Once you engage with humanity as an adult, if you have an adult relationship with something, you can experience it as it is. You can look at it as it is. So MLK desires sexual variety as humans do, as we all do, So where does it come from? Why don't I want to talk about it? Why do I have some shame around it? Again, I think it's about those archetypes that I can free myself from. And you see, like, and just to kind of let it rock, where I am now, instead of being a roving, single man, I have a super awesome, honest marriage relationship where my true nature is not shrouded and hidden from my wife. It's front and center. It's made clear. Not like, and obviously, like, you don't have to be everything. You don't have to think. People have these, you need your space for your thing, and there's no commitment to be the most, transparent, everything. But, one of the weirdest questions I get when I talk to like other male friends about the nature of my relationship, dudes will be like, so you tell your wife everything, nigga? Everything? Every fucking thing? And I'll be like, I think so. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that question is asked and so aggressively, like, I'll be like, damn, what is the thing really? But yeah, like, and the way it works for us is at the top of every month, we set aside a specific time, even as honesty is encouraged and expected every single day, all the time. But we have a dedicated period at the top of the month where any request, any desire, any concern, any notes, any challenges, any things that could have been tough if it was said in the moment, be like, yo, 3 days ago there was an X and I want to discuss this now. We have that space dedicated that we can shape and remold our understanding of stuff so that no one is holding resentment. There's nothing unspoken that needs to be kept this up. Even selfish things can be articulated here, and especially selfish things, please. Because what's the goal? I want to know you. I don't want to not know you. I want to actually know you. But unfortunately, that's not the framing of a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff is about performing the right things, And it's like that from the jump. It's like from the dating situation, it's about performing the right things. And then in the marriage relationship, you get into this natural evolution. First off, there's a natural thing that might be called like a lack of variety. There might be you might fall into a rut of like predictability that comes from something that's possible. But then further, not only is there a rut that could, but like everyone is always evolving, always, So we have this thing, and every month we can like reconnect. And so sometimes Sheba and I are deeply monogamous, and then other times we are super non-monogamous, and then other times we decide we want to do more investment here. We want to. It's the same stuff. In this same conversation come things about like furnishing the house and questions about budgets and all of that, if needed, but also this. So as I said, we have friends. We're non-monogamous, and we hang out and play games with an awesome lesbian couple, and they're great, and they're really dope, and they're fine, and we have a great time. And what else is there to say there? I don't know. What I love about it, and I said this in the last one, apart from just sex, it's truly friendship, and we have this freedom to be ourselves, you know what I'm saying, from a place of respect. See, that's what I think a lot of the challenges come from. It comes from having to perform our own preconceived notions about what we should be doing, whatever role we have, in the dude role or the girl role, and the potential wife role, the potential husband role, especially, then you can add more shit, the potential Christian husband, wife role, and all these expectations. We communicate really, really well. And part of that is this like amazing freedom to be. So I love that. And I want to be able to talk about that more freely. And I will. Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about, real talk, is faith. I touched on it a little bit, I guess. But my faith is something that I don't talk a lot about either. A couple of years ago when I started leaving CNN and started doing these kinds of things, I didn't want to talk about faith at all. I have respect for faith. I understand from where it comes, and I have respect for the various ways that faith shows up. And I have my challenges with the religions that try to organize different faiths, And I'm intrigued, I'm interested in those conversations. I enjoy those conversations, those comparisons, and the discourse, the interfaith discourse. There was a period in my life where I called myself an atheist. I was intrigued by, Christopher Hitchens, who's a renowned literary beast and an atheist. And he used to call himself an anti-theist, actually. He used to say that some people are atheists, but they think it would be nice if there was an all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful God that could command things of us. But he says he's further than that. He's an anti-theist. It's pretty clever, but I never went that far. I was just kind of more of an atheist. And now, as I've said in another video, I see myself as a person of spiritual orientation, okay? There was a time where that kind of phrase, calling myself spiritual, to me felt like a cop-out. It was an effort to hold on to something that wasn't real. Oh, you know it's not real, but you don't like the church. Okay, so you spiritual. Oh, okay, right. And that's how I would That's what I thought people were doing. But I don't have that position anymore, right? I think that there are things in this world, there are experiences, there's a truth, there are deeper truths that are simply outside of our perception, each of us. And there are deeply complex systems of truth and engagement. I say systems of truth because there's mad truths going on. There's truths on top of truths, and there's perspectives that provide different truths. And so there are systems of truths and interlocking experiences and interactions and truths that are part of this experience that we don't know anything about. I think there are things that are occurring to us individually that we form narratives about that are wholly incomplete. One of the interesting things is and a great example is like when people talk about their relationships sometimes. I realize that we don't realize how much broader structures are at play in certain relationships. The stress that income insecurity can play on a relationship. Certain mental health crises are subtly at play in a relationship, but that a lack of awareness around this means that you won't give that its proper due in your understanding of what's going on. And so you're very concerned about X. You're very concerned that she is something. She isn't quite something. You're very concerned that he isn't doing X. But that there's a whole set of things at play that are part of what you're experiencing. And the depth of that is really nutty. And I think part of love is that like capacity to be able to kind of go through that process together. To be aware of the complexity of the arrangement, aware of the brilliance of your moment that you are both here in this moment, able to experience each other for some reason, and that the things that brought you here are going to be different, and to be interested in that question. So a lot of the ways we date is just off of like somebody looks good. Okay, great. So they look good. And eventually I hope you can get into a deeper experience of them beyond that, because that's what love is, So I think that a lot of different faiths are attempting to point to something, but that approach them with different things in mind. And you can see it. You can look at the historical record and the history around the faith and kind of see the politics at the time and the mindset of different people and different key players. And that's all interesting stuff, I was raised Christian, raised in a Baptist Christian church, and I don't know, I'm really interested in the question of faith. I think that the way I approach faith now is an awareness of what we don't know, and an attempt to try to like detach from things that I claim to know. And that's what faith is. Because faith actually means that. It means to to step forward without knowing. I think faith is something deeply personal. I think that we each approach the unknown differently. And the weird thing about it is that, we start off, our first attempts will be different because we learn it from our different parents. We learn how to try to ascertain the divine, and we learn how to engage with the unknown. What I found recently is that we are all super capable. We are all a great deal more capable than we know. And the requirement to understand that, like, I could tell you that, and you could sort of like intellectualize it. You could agree with me, and we could sort of feel good. We can sort of intellectualize it. But there's a deeper, like, experience with that truth where you begin to let go of fears and assumptions and little blockages. We have all these different blockages. I promise you, like I'm saying, like, talking about my family is a huge blockage, and that I hope, and I know that I've released some of that today. Talking about the detention situation with the cops. Like a traumatic blockage, that I've released some of that today. And by knowing more about myself and about these blockages, I free up my capacity to explore more of myself and to be more present and to be more free. So I said in a different video, I think, we exist in a thing that is always evolving, that's always changing. If you go out in nature, you see how multiplicitous all the different forms of things are, and everything seems to have a random positioning, but they actually have its place, and it does what it does. And that I've found healing through some of the traumatic stuff that I've described today, and other stuff. I find myself capable of, like, finding energy and positivity and healing through an acceptance of what is, like, you can't love yourself if you don't have a state of acceptance for even the difficult things that got you to the present. It needs to be an acceptance and an internalization of those truths that make you a part of the whole. And once it's accepted, you can actually understand certain ways that you've behaved, certain lenses that you carried. They can make sense, and it produces a completely different experience, that not only frees you up, but also, like I said, frees up and redefines you. It redefines the world. It redefines your relationship with others. You end up having a greater understanding for the path that others are going through, through your own liberation. So, 2 years ago, I thought that was all too crazy, and I couldn't talk about it. In fact, what I'm able to say now is something deeper than what I could have said 2 years ago, because by not speaking about it in public, by not writing about it, by being too fearful of it, I never really was able to, like, examine it fully. And so today I find myself in a position to really, be able to articulate a difficult thing, with a degree of clarity that wasn't possible before. You have to step in first. in order to be it. You you see a version of yourself that you like or could be or want to be. The fact that you see it, the fact that it's a potentiality for you, it's unique to you. You have a very particular set of inner desires and inner anxieties and inner fears that you have been able to visualize something better, a definition of the good that can be yours. It is yours. And once you look at it as an external thing, the next step is to begin to be it. And that is to step into it. Do what that thing would do. Do what that person would do. But it's a difficult process and it requires a shedding, because the very reason you saw it as a separate thing in the first place is because of a conception in your mind. You have, from the jump, you have conceived of yourself as a separate thing from that goal. So very quietly, one of the quiet psychological moves that's needed is to close that separation, to fuse yourself with the vision of self, the archetype. And it's a very powerful thing to do. And sometimes to do it, you got to do counterintuitive moves in order to do that. You got to kind of ask yourself, what do you think is the difference between you and that person? And then in that process, you step into that. So then you step into that difference. You step into it. And then there you realize, oh, you're still not that person. It opens up. Okay, you got further in and you realize there's more to it than that. It's more complex than you had originally thought. And this is where people get frustrated and they kind of fall off. But then you've got to continue to ask further questions about who you want to be. What are you seeing? What's the difference between you and that thing? Why do you want that thing? And to start to notice that it's a lot of your own assumptions about self. Notice how you are sort of caught in a set of thoughts about self that really are governing your choices, but even your capacity to see certain times, So like I said, man, I was locked in this like save the family thing for years and years and years, and didn't even know it, but it was a deep tension for me. And it's been beautiful to unlock that and kind of find a different place of access and being, And so, I'm pointing to something that's psychological. I'm pointing to something that's just an arena with very little discourse and knowledge. And so, it treads on the realm of faith sometimes, but understanding this has changed my whole understanding of like myself and the world, about what's happening, about the feelings that I had, about the stories I held on to, about the interactions I had with people, the things I thought, I held on to some grudge with my stepfather or something. Understanding the ways our brains work and the ways that we are all attached and going through this process together, So there it is, guys. That's my 5, yo. That's my 5. Family, anxiety, police arrest, detention, sex and non-monogamy, and faith. I am free from being all weird and anxious around that, man. I can talk about these things because that's what life is. They are that's what truth is. So I'm comfortable in that. And I am happy to be here talking to y'all, man. And the journey continues on How Billy Sees It. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for checking me out. Love y'all very much. Please leave in the comments, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to share. I really do think there's something valuable about that, because I think that we are all, sort of, one way to think about us is, that we're localized imprints of consciousness. We're localized examples of what is, and that we have to communicate. When we create a culture, whether it's something called cancel culture or shame culture or something where we don't allow people to be, we dictate that people speak certain ways and we ask them to hide other things. I think that we actually harm ourselves together, all of us. So, love y'all very much, y'all. All right? Have a good night. I'm gonna let y'all out with my song right now. And honesty and empathy. Peace.
It's Billy. Right now. Yo, what if I got attacked by the clones? What if the builder think they found a better stone? What if the beat don't match with the metronome? What if that means you walk your path alone? Call me a vagabond. If all these streets lead into Rome, then wherever I lay is my home. It's Brooklyn, boy strong. I manifest, I'm in the zone. Y'all silly better back up off my throne. Listen, boy nice, better give him his propers. How we come out sane from all the mosh pits. How we found the key to the game without a locksmith. How we seem to manage these lanes is so obnoxious. He let it flow from the brain, trusting the process. A vet journeyman on multiple rosters. If I want it, I go out and get it and cop it. A monster with limitless options. Man, like goddamn, y'all gon' soon figure out who I am. We stay cooking, y'all used to that spam. Western beef, I might square up at the square dance. Look, I change plans, not even a southpaw, I'm an outlaw with a rare stance. Your crew never had a fair chance.
Why's that?
I kill a whole bear with my bare hands. Oh, they studied the dark? Well, I was raised in it. Brain shifted, the kid displayed insane physics. Best story never told, and it ain't finished. How we handled a rock, spun and kept the same pivot. I frame different, hot like a flame kitchen. A whole 2 levels out of your range gifted. Catch me on the highway, lane switching. Or right at the top of your bay wish list. It's Billy.